What if the best classic movies weren't locked behind streaming apps or expensive rentals, but hiding in plain sight? What if YouTube wasn't just clips and trailers, but a secret vault of forgotten cinema waiting for curious viewers who know where to look? Somewhere between grainy thumbnails and dusty uploads, real classics are quietly streaming for free, and most people scroll right past them. That's about to change, and one of these films proves how wrong modern movie rules really are. Number 15. Detour, 1945. This movie looks small, cheap, almost accidental, and that's exactly why it works. Detour was made fast, with limited money, and almost no safety net. The story follows a restless piano player drifting across America, convinced that bad luck isn't random, it's personal. Every choice he makes feels reasonable in the moment, and every one of them quietly pushes him deeper into trouble. No explosions, no grand speeches, just pressure, coincidence, and regret stacking up like unpaid bills. What makes Detour unforgettable is how openly bitter it feels. The lead character isn't heroic. He complains. He blames the world. He talks directly to you, daring you to judge him while knowing you probably would have made the same choices. The road feels endless. The rooms feel cramped. Even silence feels accusatory. Behind the camera, the director was working on the edges of the industry, forced to turn limitations into style. Harsh lighting, tight framing, and flat delivery weren't accidents. They became the mood. That rawness later turned Detour into a favorite among filmmakers who valued honesty over polish. Watching it free on YouTube feels strange in the best way. This is a movie that was never meant to survive. And yet, here it is, still quietly arguing that fate doesn't need help from villains. Sometimes, it just waits for you to blink. Number 14. Too Late for Tears, 1949. This film opens with a mistake that feels harmless. That's the trick. Too Late for Tears starts when a suitcase ends up in the wrong car. No dramatic music cue, no warning, just a moment that could easily be brushed off. Instead, it becomes the center of everything that follows. The story isn't about action. It's about desire. About what happens when someone realizes they don't want the life they already have. The real force here is the lead performance. The main character isn't confused or hesitant. She's sharp, alert, watching the world closely and learning how to use it. At the time, audiences weren't ready for a woman written with this much control and ambition. The industry didn't quite know what to do with her either. The film slipped into obscurity for years, not because it was weak, but because it felt uncomfortable. It didn't offer easy comfort or clear moral signposts. It let consequences unfold slowly, almost casually. That quiet confidence is what makes it feel modern today. Seeing it free online now is like finding a lost chapter of film history. Too Late for Tears doesn't shout. It smiles politely while tightening the room around its characters. And by the time it's over, you realize the title wasn't exaggerating at all. Number 13. The Hitchhiker, 1953. This movie doesn't rush, it doesn't need to. The Hitchhiker follows two ordinary men on a routine road trip that takes a wrong turn. What makes the story unsettling isn't spectacle, but proximity. Long drives, tight spaces, conversations that feel normal until they suddenly aren't. The tension grows from being stuck with someone you can't escape. What makes this film stand out is who made it. Directed by Ida Lupino, it was one of the first major thrillers shaped by a woman behind the camera. She strips away glamour and focuses on behavior. Glances, tone, small shifts in control. The road becomes a trap, not because it's dangerous, but because it keeps going. The movie was praised quietly, then forgotten loudly. It didn't fit neat categories. It wasn't flashy enough to become iconic at the time, but it was too focused to fade completely. Filmmakers later pointed to it as a masterclass in restraint. Watching it free today feels almost intimate. The film doesn't ask for your attention, it assumes it. And once you're locked in, you realize how rare that kind of confidence really is. Number 12. The Big Combo, 1955. This is what darkness looks like when it commits. The Big Combo is a film built from shadows. Faces appear and disappear. Rooms feel half-finished, like the truth itself hasn't fully arrived yet. The story follows a determined investigator chasing a powerful figure who seems untouchable, not because of strength, but because of influence. What shocked audiences at the time wasn't what happened, but how it felt. The movie didn't reassure viewers. It questioned authority. It blurred lines. It suggested that obsession could look a lot like purpose if you weren't careful. Behind the scenes, the visuals were created with minimal resources and maximum intention. Lights were used sparingly. Darkness wasn't something to fight. It was something to lean into. That decision turned the film into a visual blueprint for later crime stories. For years, The Big Combo existed mostly as a reference point for filmmakers, not audiences. Now, it's sitting on YouTube, free, waiting for viewers who are curious enough to click past the algorithm's comfort zone. It doesn't ask if you feel safe watching it. It asks whether safety was ever the point. Number 11. The Stranger, 1946. This film hides its tension behind politeness. The Stranger takes place in a quiet town where everything looks orderly. Smiles are exchanged, routines are followed, and something deeply wrong is pretending to belong. The story centers on an investigator who believes a dangerous past hasn't disappeared. It's just changed addresses. Orson Welles plays against expectation here. Calm, controlled, almost friendly. That restraint makes the performance unsettling. The danger isn't loud, it's patient. The film suggests that history doesn't vanish when people stop talking about it. Production was messy, cuts were forced, scenes were reshaped. And yet, what remains is tightly focused. The famous clock tower sequence isn't about action. It's about time running out while everyone pretends nothing is wrong. For years, this film lived in the shadow of bigger titles. Watching it free now, you realize how sharp it still is. The Stranger isn't interested in spectacle. It's interested in denial, and that makes it feel uncomfortably relevant. Number 10. Kansas City Confidential, 1952. This movie feels like it already knows how modern thrillers work, decades before they existed. Kansas City Confidential opens with a carefully planned job carried out by people who never learn each other's names. No loyalty, no trust, just a system built on secrecy. When things unravel, the fallout isn't loud. It's methodical. Every step feels logical, which somehow makes it more tense. The story follows a man pulled into chaos through circumstance rather than choice. He isn't bold or flashy. He's observant, patient, watching patterns instead of chasing them. That calm intelligence gives the movie its edge. You're not waiting for a big moment. You're watching pieces quietly slide into place. At the time, the film didn't get much attention. It didn't have glamour or comforting resolutions. But later, filmmakers noticed the masked planning, the fractured loyalty, the idea that professionalism doesn't equal morality. Those elements would become staples decades later. Watching it free on YouTube feels like discovering a missing blueprint. Kansas City Confidential doesn't demand attention. It earns it. And by the end, you realize how many films borrowed from it without ever saying thank you. Number 9. D.O.A. 1950. This movie starts at the end and then dares you to keep watching. D.O.A. opens with a man walking into a police station to report something impossible. He calmly explains that he has been given a limited amount of time and he wants answers before it runs out. From there, the story rewinds, retracing his final days through crowded streets, neon signs, and unanswered questions. What makes this film stand out is its urgency. Conversations overlap, locations change quickly. The city feels alive and indifferent. No one slows down just because someone else is in trouble. That realism hit audiences hard, especially in a time when movies often offered reassurance. Behind the scenes, the production leaned into speed and simplicity. No excess, no distractions. Every scene moves the story forward. That focus turned D.O.A. into a favorite among writers who admired clarity over spectacle. Finding it free online today feels fitting. The movie is about borrowed time, after all. It doesn't pretend life is fair or orderly. It simply asks what you would do if answers mattered more than comfort, and that question still lands. Number 8. The Most Dangerous Game, 1932. This film moves fast, but its ideas linger. The Most Dangerous Game was made during a brief window when Hollywood was willing to take risks. The story follows a shipwreck survivor who washes ashore on a remote island owned by a refined aristocrat with unsettling hobbies. At first, the setting feels elegant. Then the rules quietly change. What shocked early audiences wasn't action. It was implication. The film trusted viewers to connect the dots without spelling everything out. That restraint made it more intense. The atmosphere carries the weight, not spectacle. Even more surprising is how it was made. Large portions were filmed on the same sets used for King Kong, often at night after the main production wrapped. Cast and crew worked long hours, racing against time. That urgency shows on screen. For years, the film existed as a curiosity. Too sharp for its era, too old for mainstream rediscovery. Now it's freely available, and it feels timeless. The Most Dangerous Game isn't about survival alone. It's about what happens when curiosity loses its limits. Number 7. The Last Man on Earth, 1964. This movie understands loneliness better than most. The Last Man on Earth presents a quiet world. Streets are empty, buildings stand untouched. One man moves through routines simply to stay grounded. The danger isn't noise or chaos. It's repetition, silence, memory. Vincent Price delivers one of his most restrained performances here. There's no grand monologue, just exhaustion layered over routine. The story unfolds slowly, letting atmosphere do the work. That patience confused early critics, who expected something louder. Production was complicated. Multiple crews, language barriers, limited resources, yet those constraints helped shape the mood. The emptiness feels genuine, the stillness feels earned. Decades later, the film's influence became obvious. Many modern stories borrowed its tone, its pacing, its focus on isolation. Watching it free today feels strangely appropriate. The film doesn't rush to entertain you. It asks you to sit with quiet. And that's what makes it powerful. Number 6. Suddenly, 1954. This is a film that almost vanished because it felt too real. Suddenly tells the story of a small town disrupted by outsiders who bring tension into an otherwise ordinary setting. Frank Sinatra plays against his usual image, delivering a performance that is calm, controlled, and unsettling precisely because it avoids exaggeration. When the film was released, reactions were divided. Some praised its honesty, others felt uncomfortable with its subject matter. Over time, the movie quietly slipped away, rarely shown and rarely discussed. What makes it fascinating now is how restrained it is. No grand speeches, no exaggerated villains, just ordinary spaces filled with unease. The tension comes from waiting, not action. Finding Suddenly free on YouTube feels like reopening a sealed file. It reminds you that cinema doesn't always disappear because it's bad. Sometimes it disappears because it asks questions people aren't ready to answer. Number 5. Scarlet Street, 1945. This movie doesn't warn you. It just lets you walk in. Scarlet Street begins quietly, almost politely, an ordinary man, a modest routine, a harmless creative hobby that feels like a private escape. Then someone notices, and everything shifts. What follows isn't chaos, but erosion. Piece by piece, dignity slips away. What made this film unsettling in its time wasn't plot twists. It was tone. The story refuses to comfort the viewer. It shows how manipulation doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it pretends to help. The main character believes he's finally being seen, and that belief becomes his weakness. Behind the camera, the director pushed for emotional realism over likability. Characters aren't softened, consequences aren't rushed. That approach caused backlash. Some theaters refused to show the film, others demanded edits. The discomfort was the point. Years later, critics recognized what audiences once rejected. Scarlet Street isn't about bad people. It's about ordinary people making quiet decisions that add up to irreversible change. Watching it free today feels almost intrusive, like reading a diary that was never meant to be public. And that honesty is exactly why it stays with you. Number 4, The Stranger, 1946. This story hides danger behind routine. The Stranger takes place in a town where nothing appears out of place. People smile, classes are taught, life moves on. But beneath that order is a question the film refuses to ignore. What if the past never left? Orson Welles plays a man who understands how to blend in. He doesn't dominate scenes. He occupies them, calm, observant, almost forgettable if you aren't paying attention. That restraint makes the tension feel personal rather than dramatic. The story unfolds through suspicion rather than proof. Conversations feel polite but loaded. Glances linger. Silence matters. The famous clock tower sequence isn't about speed, it's about inevitability. At the time, this approach confused audiences expecting spectacle. Over the years, the film earned respect for its focus and discipline. It doesn't chase attention, it waits for it. Finding the Stranger free now feels like rediscovering a warning wrapped in calm language. It asks how well we really know the systems we trust, and whether comfort ever equals safety. Number 3, His Girl Friday, 1940. This movie moves so fast it almost outruns itself. His Girl Friday throws you into a world where words are currency and speed is power. Conversations overlap. Interruptions are constant. Everyone talks like time is running out, and in a way it is. At its core, the film is about choice, career versus comfort, familiar chaos versus quiet certainty. The characters don't slow down to explain themselves, and neither does the script. That relentless pace confused some viewers when it first arrived. Behind the scenes, the director encouraged improvisation and competition. Actors pushed each other to go faster, sharper, smarter. The result feels electric even decades later. You're not watching a performance. You're keeping up with it. What makes this movie last isn't humor alone, it's honesty. The story understands ambition, it understands attachment, and it understands how easily people confuse urgency with importance. Watching it free today feels like discovering how modern dialogue was born. It doesn't ask you to relax, it dares you to keep up. Number 2, The Asphalt Jungle, 1950. This film treats ambition like gravity. Once it starts pulling, you don't escape. The Asphalt Jungle follows a carefully planned operation built on precision and trust. Every role is defined, every step rehearsed. But the film isn't interested in perfection. It's interested in cracks. What made it stand out was its refusal to romanticize success. The characters aren't glamorous, they're focused, tired, human. Even small desires become liabilities. The city itself feels indifferent, watching quietly as plans unravel. When it was released, reactions were uneasy. There was no clear hero, no reassurance, just process and consequence. That honesty made the film influential long after its initial run. It also marked a turning point for several careers, including an early appearance by a future icon still learning how to command attention. Watching it free now feels like reading a manual written in hindsight. The Asphalt Jungle doesn't judge its characters. It simply shows what happens when control meets reality, and it doesn't blink. Number 1, The Great Dictator, 1940. This film shouldn't work. and yet it does. The Great Dictator balances humor with seriousness in a way few films dare. Charlie Chaplin plays two roles that mirror each other, one powerful, one ordinary. The contrast is deliberate. The message is clear without being heavy-handed. At the time, many thought the film was risky, too direct, too bold. Chaplin ignored hesitation and trusted clarity. The result is a story that uses laughter not to distract, but to reveal. What makes this film last isn't its scale or its production, it's conviction. The final moments shift tone completely, offering sincerity instead of spectacle. That choice divided audiences then and still sparks discussion now. Seeing it free today feels almost surreal. A movie made decades ago still speaks with urgency and relevance without needing to shout. The Great Dictator earns its place at the top because it proves something timeless. Cinema doesn't need permission to matter, it only needs courage. So the next time someone says all the great movies are locked behind paywalls, remember this list. 15 classics, free, waiting, not trending, not recommended, just sitting there for viewers willing to look deeper. If one of these surprised you, say which one. Share this with someone who thinks YouTube has nothing left to offer, and ask yourself this: how many masterpieces are still hiding in plain sight?